Ready to start.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Patsy Brescia opening a meeting of the Norwalk Charter Revision Commission at about 6:33 on February 15th. And so I'll take the roll call. Rick McQuaid is here. Michael Weatherspoon. Vanita Raleigh Watson.
Here.
Hi. Carl Dickens.
Here.
Angela Wasuna.
Here.
And Tyler Fairborn.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. First item on our agenda is the minutes of the February 1st meeting. Motion to move the minutes is in order.
So move.
Mr. McQuaid moves, second.
Second.
Okay, thank you both. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Any corrections? Any changes?
One
Tyler?
spelling, minor spelling,
Okay.
Mr. McQueen's name,
Oh,
sixth paragraph down under discussion.
wow, I missed that.
It's not looking where I put it.
Okay.
That was the only thing that I had.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, yeah. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, moving the minutes as changed. That's correct.
Aye.
All those in favor. Thank you very much. The minutes passed. So we have an exciting evening, I think, tonight to hear from a lot of people that can give us some guidance and instructions. So I'll turn it over to our legal counsel, Steve Bendick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vinny,
Discussion.
President Vinny DiGilio is in the attendee area. Can somebody bring him into the meeting? Jordan, have you see him there?
Just being, we're moving right now.
Okay, thank you.
He's good.
Good. So thank you. There he is. Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the commission. It's my honor and pleasure to bring in a few folks from around the state to be of assistance to us. And I'll explain. I know them all reasonably well. President Vinny DiGilio has actually participated in a number of our panels. In fact, he and Tom Livingston were on a panel together. Might have been for Hampden. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was Hartford. I can't remember last year on a similar subject. And he represents a community similar to ours with a hybrid council with 2-year terms. So he'll be joining us. He's here this evening. My good friend and client and a member of the body that I served on for 10 years, Taisha Walker Myers is the president of the New Haven Board of Alders. She's a really dynamic and outstanding political leader in that community, and I think well regarded throughout the state. New Haven, I also represent the New Haven Charter Commission as we speak, and she'll be talking about the same issue because New Haven is going through exactly the same debate and review that you're going through right now, where they have a 2-year term for both mayor and the Board of Alders, and they are going through the cycle of trying to make a determination about what they should do in the future. And so Taisha is here, and I'm very, very pleased that she is here. The third member who is here, I felt like I spent 3 years of my life looking at on a screen for 2 charter revisions in Hampden. Sarah Gallagher is a member of the council in Hampden. Prior to her service on the council, she was a member of a charter revision commission that met its demise before the city council 2 years ago, but then it was resurrected by the new city council that she serves on. She served as the chair of the charter commission in a community like yours, which has a hybrid board that has members that are elected at large and members elected from districts. And they moved to a 4-year, 2-year model where they have 2 years for their council and 4 years for the mayor. But the mayor's 4-year term will not commence until after the election of 2025. So if we may, I will ask each of them to say a few words and mainly be available for question and conversation because, as I said, New Haven is going through this debate right now. And so Taisha Walker Myers is probably thinking about the same things you're thinking about. And so I thought we'd start off by inviting your sister city, New Haven, that's literally going through the debate, and to ask Taisha to say a few words, and then we'll move on to the other members.
Well, we appreciate all of you guiding us and helping us and sharing your wisdom. So,
and before I defer to Taisha, I want to say that Mally Rosado, who's an outstanding council president in Hartford, just took ill tonight, and she just wanted me to send her regrets and her regard to all of you. Just to point out for the record, Hartford is an at-large system, and Hartford has 4-year terms for both mayor and for council. They moved there about 20 years ago, but so they're in a different place than you are. I think the 3 speakers tonight are coming at much more analogous situations. So we'll miss Mally, but I kind of explained what Hartford has to you right now. So I'd like to, it's my honor to introduce to you my good friend and client, Taisha Walker Myers, the president of the New Haven Board of Alders.
okay.
You and good evening to everyone. Thank you for inviting me to participate in your charter revision conversation, which we're having in New Haven. I've been the president of the Board of Alders since 2015 in New Haven, and I'm just here to help in any way and assist and answer any questions. But I think it is definitely a lively debate over whether we should go to a 4-year term or not. And I actually think, you can argue for both or against both, actually. So I'm just here to assist, and thank you for inviting me again.
Okay, well, we'll move on. Why don't we have, Vinny, if it's okay with you, Mr. President, if we ask Sarah Gallagher, because Hampden actually acted on this and the voters voted for it. I can point out historically, I'll point out for the record, I was counsel to their charter commission 11 years ago now, I think it was, where they considered and rejected the 4-year term because they thought it was extremely controversial. In that decade, between that charter commission and the 2 commissions that we had in the last 2 years, I think there was a real sea change from the point of view that they had a decade ago. So I want to, at this point, ask the council member, Sarah Gallagher, if she has a few words she'd like to say.
Thanks, Stephen. Hello, everybody. So good to be with you here tonight. Thank you for inviting me. It's really actually very fun to be part of somebody else's charter revision process. I spent like last 4
Sharing
years.
the pain.
It feels so much less stressful, like watching yours than going through ours. So I feel your pain and yet the excitement that you're going through. I know it's a lot of work and a lot of hard decisions. So I'll give a little bit of background and then I'll talk quickly about what we did and sort of what folks thought about it. So we, as Steve mentioned, we got to our 10-year sort of cycle for our charter revision. And in 2021, we had a 15-member commission that I was on, and that was all citizens of the town that opened up the charter and started to look at it. At that time, our sort of process was really led by, I think, public participation and comment. And so we really opened it up with several sessions of public comment, probably like you did as well. And we identified the areas and themes that were most important for us to address in our charter. And by and large, the things that raised to the top for Hampden was the need for financial stability and looking at the budget. And I'm sure you're all aware of sort of where Hampden is in that process. The second was looking at the professionalization of town management and accountability, and looking at, as we're growing as a town into actually a city, do we have enough professionalism in our government, and is it structured the way we need it to be structured to handle the needs of a city that we've been calling a town for many years. The third was ensuring transparency in government, which is related. And then the fourth was really around supporting equity for all town residents. And so given that, several of the things that we looked at had to do with town governance. And because of that, one of the things that we looked at a kind of a suite of changes that this conversation around term limits fit into. We looked at, did we need a town manager? Did we need someone to come in, or a related chief operating officer position? How could we really look at the finance, having more financial structures and getting a finance committee to work with our legislative council and the mayor during the budget process? We looked at, so several areas related to governance structure. When we got to the question of terms, we also weren't sure, what that would mean. So we actually invited a panel. Steve invited a panel of guests to come also talk with us. Some had 4-year mayors, some did not. And I think some of the conversation we had at that time, when we thought about the 2 versus 4-year term, was, was the mayor in a 2-year term able to really affect the policies that they wanted, that the public, and the voters had voted them into effect? Or were they basically having a year to impact policy and try things out, and then running again for the next year, and then having another year and then running? And that's sort of the cycle that I think our residents and we thought we were in, was a sort of 1 year on, 1 year off, and really having these 2-year stints. So that was a big concern of, I think, the public. The other thing was that there was concern, we have our Board of Education has a split vote. So, every 2 years they're staggered, which is a term I learned through this process. So they're staggered. And so one of the concerns was, by switching to the 4-year term, would that change voter turnout and decrease participation on those off years for Board of Education members if there was only a couple of members on the ballot? And so that was something we wanted to consider. So we were thinking about that. I think the other thing we were thinking about was the impact on legislative council, and how did that, if we move from a 2 to a 4-year term, how would that impact legislative council members running for office? And we think we landed on that this would actually benefit legislative council members and really allow the residents to vote for legislative council members on the off years, and to be able to use that as an accountability structure. So the legislative council members wouldn't be necessarily tied to the mayor's ballot. They would be tied to what they were trying to achieve within their districts or within at large, and would really be voted on more of an autonomous nature. And that really provided sort of a checks and balance in those off years when we moved to the 4-year term. So all in all, we, based on what we heard from other towns, based on sort of what we were seeing across the country, I think Steve mentioned before, there's sort of been this movement, it seems, from 2 to 4 years. The other thing I want to mention is we felt that with a 2-year term, we were kind of limiting ourselves in the candidates that were willing to run for mayor. We found that in some of the, cities and towns across the country that had 4-year terms, you opened up the pool a little bit, because more folks are willing to kind of put their job on the line, their professional job on the line. They're not in, if they're doing something else, to run for mayor for a 4-year term, because there's a little more stability there and they're able to achieve more, rather than a 2-year term, which is not quite as stable. So we thought, it could open up the candidate pool as well for mayors. Sorry, I just wanted to go back. That was one of the considerations I didn't mention, so I wanted to go back there. So we thought as well that folks would really resist this, and that it would be very controversial in the town. We heard a little bit of input during deliberations when the Charter Revision Commission was meeting, but most of it was actually for the 4-year term. Very few folks came out to speak against it. And so both within the first Charter Revision Commission and the second, because this happened during the first and it was retained in the second Charter Revision Commission. So we had very little public comment against it. When we went to when it went to the council for approval, there was some concern on the council that given the way we are, that the current mayor is new, that they would be grandfathered into another 4-year term. So we pushed it off until 2025 just to kind of have it start fresh. So it won't take effect until the 2025 election. That was the only change that the Legislative Council made. And again, during those deliberations, we didn't push back. We thought about pulling it out as a separate item on the ballot when it went to when the charter went to be a ballot question, but we decided not to, just to keep it all together. Some of us were like, well, is this going to put the whole charter at risk? Is this going to be a hot topic that folks are going to be concerned about? But honestly, we didn't hear a lot of concern about it. This was not the issue that kind of rose to the top. I think folks were ready for it. They understood the value of having a 4-year term. They really thought it was more beneficial than it was concerning. And given that we kept the 2-year terms for the Legislative Council, they really felt there was this checks and balance in place that was able to kind of mitigate any concerns that they have. So it passed without any concerns at all. It's going to go into place. So I think, Steve, is anything I missed on sort of our
No,
term?
the only thing, and Sarah just talked about this a moment ago, I think that one of the mollifying facts for people who might have concerns about the length of a 4-year term and the lack of accountability is the fact that you do have the counter election. You have the council that serves as a bellwether, so that if a mayor is abusive, if a mayor is off the rails, you can certainly, you don't have the mayor at the top of the ticket or a political party that is pulling for the ticket. And the fact that they have districts also means that neighborhood representatives, like New Haven has a ward system, neighborhood representatives have a much better shot at breaking through any political party machines or structures. So I think that probably helped. I don't think that was articulated a lot because there was not a lot of opposition, but I think that the idea that they had this counter election, the by-election, was a factor in probably alleviating any concerns that people might have had about accountability. So that's the only point I'd make.
Yeah. So one thing I'll say, we were concerned about voter turnout. That is something that we talked a lot about in sort of structuring this. Do we need to change the Board of Education terms or align them in any way? And so we decided that was one of the reasons to move it to 2025 is because we have I think it's a 5-7 split or with the Board of Education and how they're split. And we put the mayor with the 5, I think, in the council with the 7. So we sort of broke it up so that we could maximize and really incentivize a voter turnout. So we are hoping we'll get more folks voting in more elections rather than having decreasing any voter turnout or participation in any way.
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let the record know that Michael has been on. He was listed as an attendee, not a panelist, which is why you couldn't see him, but I wanted that on the record.
Okay. Hi, Michael.
So thank you, Sarah, and I'm sure we'll open up for questions for you and for Taisha. But I want to introduce now your neighbor from the north up Route 7 in Danbury, Vinnie DiGilio, who has been the council president for a number of years, decade now, just about a decade or so, or am I right?
I've been on the council for 10 years, second
10
term.
years on the council. Okay.
Yeah.
And Vinnie is in a community with a very similar structure. They're a little smaller in Danbury, 86,000 population, and 86 and change. And they have a hybrid system, and they have a 2-year term. And I thought it would be, and I don't know if they've gone through the debate on a 2-year, 4-year cycle, but I thought it would be interesting to have somebody from a 2-year cycle town where they are not currently debating the issue to see what their history has been and what issues have come up with respect to the issue of the council and the elections of councils. So my pleasure to introduce the president of the Council of Danbury, Vinnie DiGilio.
Thank you, Attorney Minnick, and thank you for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure getting a call from you and helping however I can, and being included is very nice. I think the 4-year term, 2-year term, like you said, Danbury is a smaller city, operate very much like a town, because we were one not long ago, and with 86,000 people and really steady growth and trajectory, presents its different challenges. Going to the charter revision, I think you used the word earlier that another town met its demise with a charter commission, and we did that earlier this year, tried to get that off the ground, and that did not work. And we'll be looking to hopefully try again and try to provide a little more education and scope. But it was surprising that we couldn't get it off the ground. But terms are always the most sensitive. I mean, a charter revision, I look at it as the terms are obviously one capacity of what we're here to talk about, but there's a lot of an ability to clean up a charter, clarify some things, create some flexibilities, given the times, and a host of things besides terms. But one of them being terms, our subject today. We have a 2-year term. We have a hybrid type of council. We have 21 person council. 14 of them are wards, so 7 wards, 2 person per ward, and then 7 at-large positions, all in the same cycle. And I think one of the challenges, and Ms. Gallagher spoke about it, was just maybe perhaps the recruitment and the experience level. We're kind of see, with a 2-year term, everybody's been announcing elections earlier and earlier, January, February. So really, you have 12 months before you have to get going, make a decision before speculation and things start. So, you kind of, from a continuity perspective, it kind of goes to our growth. We are a small city, but the projects that we take on and the opportunities that are at hand, they just become more and more complicated over time as you get bigger with different sources of funding, different people involved. So it's hard to do everything in a year or two. Some things take several years to get traction, and you could constantly have a turnover on the council and the mayor's area, and things get put on the shelf and then dusted off, and some missed opportunities. What we kind of see is who wants to be the mayor, and I kind of look at it as you get two ends of the spectrum, 2 extremes. You get people that are maybe don't have a lot of professional working or life experience that really want to do it, or you get people that are into their professional lives or careers, and it's a different perspective, and that has to tie into how long could I be a mayor for? What am I giving up? How much money is there to be made as mayor? Does that translate into a career path and opportunity for people? So there's a lot of facets to do it, and it's a challenge for somebody maybe to look at giving up or abandoning a career or putting it on pause for something that may or may not be something, one, that they like, or 2, that they're able to secure again, and really have to start thinking about that every 12 months. That could be a lot, and you might miss out on really good talent and don't have that wide net to cast. So I think you want to be able to capture everybody in their experience and life experience and professional experience for all the right reasons, and just have a better pool of folks. The projects I mentioned are a big deal, get very lengthy. We're a border city, which is a little different than some. We're a New York border city, and we have amazing access when it comes to New York City, down county, to everywhere with people on the call, all the way up to the Hartford area. And all of those things are getting bigger and better, and they take a long time to put in place, and with a lot of players. We also have a board of ed with the staggered elections. I think that my personal thoughts on it are, I think we really need to entertain a 4-year mayoral term. We need to look at that staggered, whether it's wards one cycle, at large the other cycle, but that could help with if you have an issue with a mayor where the community can speak, can elect folks, can pause things, or have effectuate some change there. And then I guess the other point, maybe I'll end on this, stop blabbing on this, is when it comes to the slate, being part of 5 different elections now, I've had the unique experience of, we have a legislative leader, a majority and minority leader for each party, and a president, so a 5-person leadership team. and I'm a little unique in that I've held all of the leadership positions on our caucus. So I've worked with every leadership position in different capacities across 3 mayors. And one thing I see at a town committee level also is filling a slate of people that want to be part of something and want to volunteer their time, because we're all unpaid, and needing to start that recruitment process every 12 months is very, very difficult. And an opportunity to show some longevity, some staying power in a position, and reduce the campaign process by 50%, perhaps the fundraising process by 50%, makes a lot of people uncomfortable. These are all maybe some of the things in the background that aren't necessarily the issue at hand with the mayoral term, but looking at terms and slates and how you're able to recruit and really have staying power and engage folks for long term. Not everybody's into the fundraising and campaigning side of things, and I think if you didn't have to do that as much, there'd be more people that would be interested in stepping forward and helping. And there'd probably be more people willing to help veterans or folks that are experienced doing it, knowing that it doesn't have to happen every 12 months with new people over and over again. It's a lot of work. And I'm speaking to the choir here, but it's a lot to manage, not to mention the actual work of being on a council and holding leadership positions. So there's a lot of merit to it. I'm hoping that we could revitalize the discussion for a charter revision, handle this as well as other aspects to tighten up things and modernize them and put it in place down the road. I think the unfortunate part about terms is it gets very, very partisan very quickly and tends to shut things down, as opposed to really look at opportunity to open things up and have a discussion and really be frank about, hey, we always talk about things that come up. What could we do better? How could we address this? How could we prevent this from happening? Put ourselves and the departments in a better position. Well, that's the charter. That's how you can do that. And if you're serious about doing those things, you need to open a charter and look at these and not put the blinders on just for partisanship in terms.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Steve, can I add one thing, please? Because I was being very modest in the beginning.
Of course, Madam President. Yeah.
I just want to say that 10 years ago, well, it's probably going on 11 now, we had a very robust charter commission in New Haven where we made tons of changes. We really took the whole entire charter and we made so many changes. So this time around, I think the reason why the 4-year term conversation is one of the ones coming up in precedent is because we did so much the last time. So this is more like a cleanup in New Haven for us. We balanced the power between the mayor and the board of alders, I believe, in the last charter. We made significant changes. So I think this was one of the outliers that we're now having conversations around. But just like in Hampden, so far, we haven't seen a lot of opposition, but we did just start our public hearings and stuff like that. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you.
And she's absolutely right. We did and for the 3 of you, the Norwalk charter process, we are basically rewriting the city charter. It's a very one of the most ambitious charter processes that I've ever been involved in the 30 years I've been doing this. And we got an outstanding, not that I'm sucking up to my commission, but we have an outstanding commission that's taking on a very, very heavy task, just to tell the 3 of you visitors here in Norwalk. Before I open up to questions, Madam Chair, I just want to raise one other quick issue because I think it's important and it's an issue we are looking at as a commission. And I think I know Hampden and New Haven. If I state it incorrectly, I'll ask both of you to correct me. But in New Haven and Hampden, they have fairly similar systems now because we actually aligned the Hampden system to the New Haven system. Taisha Walker is the president of the Board of Alders. She is also the successor to the mayor. If the mayor were to leave office, you're looking at the next mayor of New Haven. And so when you elect a president of a Board of Alders, you're really thinking about, is this somebody that you'd want to see serve in the office of mayor either on a temporary basis or permanent basis. And we also have a situation in New Haven where the pro tem, the position I held when I was on the Board of Alders, succeeds to the presidency. So you have an automatic succession. So at the beginning of your term, you elect your leadership, and that leadership is stable, and that leadership does have succession, falls into the line of succession, very similar to the model at the federal level and the state level. And so New Haven's had that model for a long time, because I've not been on the board since 1991. And that was our model back in the 1980s and 90s. Hampden now has that model. We ran into a situation in Hampden before Sarah served on the council, where the council president, I won't make any further comments on that, left about 2 weeks before the Charter Commission was taking its final vote and the council was taking its final vote. And we were going to have a big fracas, but there was not an automatic succession to the presidency. And so we ended up not having a president for the remainder of the term because it got caught up in the primary, and we just never got around to electing. We had a similar situation where we had a successor serve in the office of mayor. So Hampden fixed their system so that the president succeeds the mayor, the pro tem succeeds the president. So those two models exist now in those towns. In Norwalk right now, people think that the president succeeds the mayor, but the way the charter currently works, the council from its own members selects a replacement mayor by a plurality vote. So you can end up in a splintered situation where you have a plurality.
And not from the same party as the mayor.
Not from the same party, yeah. And so I want to ask Vinny, what do you have in, how does Danbury work on succession?
So it's a good question. The president of the city council would assume the duties of the mayor should something happen. So we, once the mayor's elected in November, we have an organizational meeting. And at that organizational meeting, the council votes on appointing a new president. And once that president's put in place, then if something were to happen to the mayor during the term, the president would be able to step up. I guess if the president was unwilling to, the president would effectively resign, and then the 21-person council would resign from being president, still an elected member of the council. Then the 21-person council would vote on a new president, who would then rush right to that role of assuming the duties of the mayor. So
and you actually had a succession when Mark Boughton became tax commissioner.
Correct. So when Mark Boughton moved on, President Joe Cavo was in the seat, and he became sworn in as mayor right after that was announced, and he finished it was approximately 1 year of the term, and then Joe actually ran back for council again, which he's elected an at-large position, but chose not to pursue being the mayor. And so we've seen that. So that's how I've served under 3 mayors. One was under those circumstances, and so now it's very real. It hasn't. I don't believe it's happened in a long time.
Okay, Madam
Well,
Chair, I'll yield the chair back to you. I'll yield back to you for questions. Yeah.
Yeah, on the issue of the succession from the mayor to the president, is that if it's a 2-year term for mayor in your community, would it also be a 2-year term for the leader of your legislative body, or is it a 1-year election?
No, it's correct. So when the president is elected as president, it would be for the 2-year term.
Okay,
I think that's true both in New Haven and Hampden. Are we correct?
Yeah, it is not in Norwalk, which
Not-
is why I wanted to bring that out. Yeah. Okay.
So, Madam Chair, I'll yield back to you and the members of the commission for any questions of our 3
Sure.
distinguished
Okay.
panelists.
Anybody want to raise their hand and jump in first?
I have a couple questions.
He's right here. He's
Yeah,
actually,
sorry.
said, I'm first.
Go ahead, you be first.
No, I said you.
Just a couple of questions. I am also the town clerk in Norwalk, so my looking ahead to how we do this with the terms has 2 roles, really. I want to see what I'm prepared for down the election road. Now, as far as each of you, what is the salary of your council people?
And I'll start. In Danbury, we're volunteer.
Zero.
We have I say our pay doubles every year. I have 10 zeros right now.
You're doing well, Ben. All right. Sarah?
I-
Oh, I'm
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, we have a small stipend. It's about, I think it's 2,000.
You can see it has a big
I do
impact
wanna-
on the councilwoman's.
I do want to say, Rick, you reminded me that we also changed the term of we have a elected town clerk, and we changed their term as well to 4 years to align with the mayor.
Yeah, that was gonna be one of my next questions. Thank you.
Yep.
Taisha?
In New
Taisha?
Haven,
Yeah,
$1,000 too. It's a stipend of $2,000 in New Haven as well.
Okay, thank you. Then I was gonna also add town clerk terms, because we ran a charter in 2016, and the only question was 4-year terms for town clerk and the mayor. It went down badly. But my question also is is your town clerk elected or appointed? So it's basically, are they 4-year terms and are they elected and appointed? So, Vinny, do you?
Yeah, so our town clerk is a 2-year elected term. They are the top 3 of every slate are the mayor, the treasurer, and the town clerk, all aligned same terms.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah, so we have I mentioned a elected town clerk, which we changed to 4-year term. We did talk briefly about should the town clerk be elected or appointed, but it was a very short conversation that folks really felt strongly should be elected.
Tisha?
And for us right now, everybody's on 2-year terms. Our town clerk is elected. And it's also right now on the table if that should be 4 years along with everyone else.
and just for the record, since she's not here, I'll speak for her. In Hartford, the city town clerk is appointed by the city council. So,
Wow.
yeah.
There are a couple of points that you sort of touched on a little bit, but it came up, I think, in a strong way here, is that with a 2-year term that we currently have, it also really affects the ability of our mayor to hire new personnel for departments because they're in place for 2 years. And interestingly enough, some of our appointments that the mayor makes are for 4 years on non-paid positions. So non-paid positions, as well as trying to attract qualified people to help us run our city. So have you had any experience with those 2 issues?
I think for us here in Danbury, yes, every 2 years, the mayor does have the purview to change out the number of staff members. Before our current mayor, we had the longest serving mayor in Danbury's history for 20 years, 10 terms. So there was a lot of continuity there, but in theory, every few years, you could easily change out some key positions, chief of staff, administrative staff, community relations, community service type roles that we have in the mayor's office, which as well as we have a legislative assistant position that supports the city council specifically. They're housed out of the mayor's office, but they are appointed by the mayor. Some people think that the charter revision should include those being appointed by the council. So it's just a different purview. But yeah, the continuity in the mayor's office, we've experienced a lot of great continuity. The existing mayor was the former 20-year mayor's chief of staff for 6+ years. So there's been a lot of continuity there. But that could be really scary, seeing that kind of turnover. And then again, it goes back to the same point you're making about attracting talent where they're much more vulnerable for not wanting some more job security. So good point.
Okay. Sarah or Tisha, do you want to address those issues?
I mean, I think it
Yes.
needs to really, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tisha.
I was gonna say, yes, when a new mayor is elected, there are certain positions that he could switch out. Some, that was previously mentioned, chief of staff, but a lot of our, positions are like, they have like a contract, so you can't get rid of them. And we experienced that we had a new mayor come in, I believe it was, and don't quote me on this, a couple years ago, like 4 years ago, I believe. And it was limited, places that he could actually replace the existing people that already work there. But as time go on, that changes. But there are some like chief of staff, the people that work in his office. Our legislative director works directly under me. So I'm the one that approve our budget for our legislative office. I'm the one that if I would like them to get a raise, give the raises, I'm the one that basically can revisit whether they should be there or not. So that's kind of our role in New Haven. But so far, I can say that we've been working with a lot of the people that was from the previous administration, and it's been going really well.
Sarah? Do you have any thoughts on those?
Yeah, I mean, I think my colleague said it pretty in line with those. I think one of our thoughts with the 4-year term was that it would trickle down to the rest of the appointees in the mayor's office and department heads. We also have a lot of folks who kind of have been around for a while and have that historical knowledge. But I think, with each mayor, the mayor's office looks a little different, and there's always a little restructuring. And it's nice to know that from a council perspective, as we're thinking about financing and how that looks, that it's going to have time to understand if it's working or not, because I don't think you can understand in a year if that restructure kind of worked and it was the most effective. So it does give you a few years to look at that. And I wholeheartedly agree that, if you really want strong candidates in the high level positions and in department heads, you really want to be able to compete with the other towns and neighboring states to bring folks in and really look at that professional pool, because folks will move if it's a 4-year position. They're not going to move for a 2-year position.
Right.
So I do think you really just do open up the level of candidates that you can pull from for those other positions in the administration.
Thanks. Any of our commissioners have other questions or?
Yes.
Who,
We have a hand up. I think Carl and
Carl, Bonita, and Angela all have their hands raised.
Okay, so how about Angela? Because we haven't seen you in a couple of meetings.
No, thank you. And thank you, Sarah, Vinny, and Tisha. This has been incredibly helpful. I guess for me, I was really hoping that, one of you would argue for the 2-year term and tell us why you think that might actually be a good option. And so I guess just to get a sense from all of you, are you all, is it sort of the trend now that you go into the 4-year term and that we're not seeing any of the towns really arguing for a 2-year term? Would that be an accurate statement? Because I haven't heard anybody being pro the 2-year term, which is what we currently have. First.
Yeah, I'm personally a proponent of the 4-year term. I think what winds up happening is the Danbury City Council and it's had a majority of one caucus for a long time. So I think the 4-year term discussion kind of becomes a non-starter with the minority party that's on the council, and creates a lot of issues there and discussion, and has been, I think, one of the reasons why we haven't been able to kick off what we need to. But yeah, the 4-year term, there's a lot of people that are very interested in it, but it comes down to why it's not moving forward. At least in my opinion, it has to do with some partisan issues and whatnot. But we're looking to work through some of those. I think for all the reasons we stated, I feel there's an appeal, and a lot of my colleagues and people I speak to are saying, geez, I can't believe it's not 4 years. I can't believe you can do you can work on things and see continuity and even know, the old adage, you don't even know where the bathroom is for the first year. And then you got to start running for your job again. It's a challenge, and I'm not aware of anybody that's pro 2 years for any other reason than partisan at this point.
And then is there a parallel conversation around limiting consecutive terms if we are going down the 4-year term route?
Well, that's a legal issue. We don't have the ability in the state of Connecticut to impose term limits.
So it's 3 years.
So it's unlimited terms. But the way, just to talk about, and Hampden moved in this direction, by the way.
Yeah.
The argument for the 4-year term is, some would argue, and I don't want to take a position, is stronger when you're looking at the executive who has to manage the government, hire the people, bring the people in to work for the multiple year terms. As Taisha pointed out, in New Haven, department heads have 4-year terms. Actually, they have 4-year contracts, and so they overlap. And so new mayors are stuck with department heads, but they tend not to be political figures. They tend to be people who are subject matter experts. And I think she said that they still do work with people who were appointed by the prior mayor, who hold over for that period of time. So that was kind of New Haven's way of getting around the 2-year term. But moving to the 4-year cycle gives the mayor an ability to hire people, bring people in from out of town. The offset is the 2-year term for the council or the board of alders, to offset the mayor. But because the argument's not as compelling on the legislative side as it is on the executive side, but that's the way it's been working in several communities. Waterbury went in that direction with 4-year term for mayor, 2-year term for the council, the board of aldermen, they call it in Waterbury.
Speak a little bit to it, right? So when I talked about what we're doing in New Haven, that's what we're doing now. That's the conversation that's on the table. I mean, I feel like people can argue. I mean, I came into a 2-year term, right? I've been on the board of alders since 2011. Been leading the board of alders as the president since 2015. So I feel like we can talk about some of the benefits of a 2-year term versus 4-year term for that body. I can argue both sides all day. But, I think that the average person would look at the 2-year term as a benefit because you have a mayor that is in for 4 years that, they don't think is doing, the best job. Then they can possibly have the city council, who is the counter to the mayor in New Haven anyway, because even the department heads that come in and their 4 years, we have to approve them, right? So the mayor just put them there. Certain positions like fire chief, police chief, all of those things in New Haven, we have to approve. So if we say no, it's a no-go. So I feel like a lot of the charter changes we made 10 years ago, I think is leading a lot of people to think about why a 4-year term for the board of alders makes sense. If you look at the history on how much turnover we've had in the last 12 years, it hasn't been much. So people, I believe back when I first started, a lot of people assumed that more people would be engaged and more people would actually run if it was a shorter time because it would be less time commitment, but that's not how it's actually turning out so far. But we're still in a conversation. We haven't made a decision whether we're going to go 4 years or stay 2 years or not. We're still talking about it. But we definitely thought it was a conversation that was worth entertaining and hearing both sides of it.
I'll probably invite some of you from Norwalk to come speak in New Haven in a couple of weeks.
Sorry, while I have the floor, but just very quickly for Sarah. I mean, so could you maybe just talk a little bit about how you socialized this issue with voters, how you positioned it, the 2 versus 4 years before the vote happened?
That's a great question. We actually talked a lot. We did several information sessions. I mean, this process was a long process. We had 2 runs at this. So it was like 3 to 4 years and 3.5 years in total. So voters were really aware that this was happening, that it failed the first time. It became part of an issue for the election, and many of the candidates were talking about it. So during the election process, it was talked about. The commission members had a website that they used to communicate some of the meetings and what was happening. We members had a communications committee in the first commission that went and actually spoke with many of the associations across town, civic associations and different community groups that meet, that were very active. So would talk to them about the different components of the charter revisions. So the term limit, the terms, 4-year terms, plus many of the other things that were in it. We had many changes we created commissions, we did lots of things. So to talk about those different aspects of it. And so we probably did 12, many of those over the course of the year. And then we created a pamphlet that we had at the end that outlined all of the different changes. And we did not pull out the 4-year term specifically. Like I said before, like we thought it was going to be an issue, and it ended up not being as much of an issue. So folks wanted to talk about, all of what was in it. We created a finance committee to work with the legislative council. I mentioned folks really wanted to talk about what's it going to do, and is it going to take what's the role, and how is it going to take the place of the council, and they're really wanting to know how that worked. So that it didn't end up being our biggest issue. Our biggest issue was a chief operating officer that the commission had wanted to add, but the legislative council removed it. And that was the big issue in Hampden that folks really debated and ended up coming out of the charter revisions. But so we had and I'm sure I can share them with Attorney Mendick to share with you, but we had a trifold that we made and were able to hand out to folks. And we had some really short social media materials that people could see. And then we were available for questions.
So I tell all my commissions, and it's a great question, Angela, that your job doesn't end when you send this over to the council.
Yeah.
You've worked along, by the time you're done, time Sarah was done, you will have worked on this for the better part of 9 or 10 months, 11 months, in Sarah's case, a couple of years. And so it's really important that the leadership on a bipartisan basis really take leadership in the November election cycle. Whether you form a PAC, some actually do. In Fairfield, they formed a PAC. Waterbury, we had a PAC a number of years ago. I encourage op-ed articles for the local newspapers, for the various media, social media that you have now, to be active on social media. And so they do all those things. But here's the other point I want to point out to you. There's a secret weapon that the municipality gets to pay for, which is called the explanatory text. And that explanatory text, where you're permitted by statute to publish a document that goes issue by issue to discuss what you've done in the charter revision, not advocating the position, but stating what it is you've done. Because very often opposition to charters are based on fear, based on conjecture, and sometimes mistruths. And the explanatory text is an official document that's prepared by your colleague, the town clerk. It's the town clerk's responsibility. I think there he is. There's Rick. The town clerk has the responsibility for preparing the explanatory text. I will work with the town clerk, presumably, to help put that together. So that's a very, very important thing. Let me point out one last thing on Hampden, because I know everybody worries. They always say to me, we want to make sure we win in November. Hampden did not lose their charter in a November cycle. The charter that we lost. Remember, I told you they couldn't replace the president of the board of the council. It was that same council that killed the charter over God knows what. It doesn't pay to discuss it right now, but it lost in the council. It did not lose to the voters. There were no issues that were raised in that cycle that caused the charter to go under. It was really primary season politics, and that Vinny probably can relate to that too. It was really kind of a intra-partisan battle, and that's what cost the charter in the first go around. Sorry, and I know there are a number of other questions. I think you have three members.
Carl,
Madam
you
Chair.
had wanted to ask some questions? Yeah, we'll get to everybody.
Now I'm off mute.
Yeah.
I had a couple, and one of them just got answered. Angela asked basically the same thing, but anybody that's on here that brings knowledge to us tonight, and thank you for coming, can answer this. Because my concern, as my fellow commissioners have heard me say on many things, is how we communicate to the public. And so Sarah had brought it up at first, and that's what I was going to direct it to you. How many of these public hearings did you said you just made a number, 11 or 12, I think, but do you know how many of these public hearings that you held?
So we could go back and count the public hearings, but we did a couple things. The public hearings we did at the beginning of the process, and then we actually opened each charter revision commission, the second round. We opened each charter revision meeting with public comment. So every meeting we took public comment. We had sort of a following at one point because it had been going on for so long. So we had sort of a regular folks, the residents who would join us. So that happened every meeting. And then we had a public hearing at the end of the process, an official public hearing before we made our recommendations and voted on them as a commission and made them to the legislative council. So there was an official public hearing then. And then when it went to the council had a public hearing, an official public hearing to open it up. And then I think it had another, and then, had their round of deliberations, and then had an official public hearing before they voted. So those were like the official ones. What I mentioned before were not hearings, but us going out to different community groups and being speakers, like how I'm talking to you now. Folks would invite us to come talk to them about the charter and what's in it and ask questions so that they understood it. We didn't officially use that as public hearing and taking comment for the charter, but it was more informational for us to be able to share what was happening in the process. And that was okay with the rules of our process to be able to participate in those outside meetings.
Okay. Then the second big question is, how did you publicize this? We don't have a lot of, believe it or not, we don't have a lot of ways to publicize things that go on in Norwalk. And while I'm very familiar with social media and work in it and that sort of thing, I don't always think that's the most efficient, particularly in Norwalk, because everybody has an opinion, as they do, I'm sure, in your towns as well, in cities. But that's where what scares me is that you put it out to social media, somebody will comment on it, somebody else will comment on it. So, and by the time the 5 comments are done, it's not the right story. And so I was just curious on how you publicize it.
Yeah, we had a website dedicated to the charter revision process. So the Charter Revision Commission has a website, had like a page on the town website. And it was, so you could link to it and you could see all the meeting agendas, you could see the notes, you could see the old charter and then the revisions and backup material as we were working on it. We I don't know how you guys are doing yours, probably similar to how we did ours, kind of went through section by section and used track changes to make recommendations and then kind of voted on it at the end. So at any time, folks could really kind of see where we were and use those backup materials, look at those backup materials because they're all attached to the agendas. So that was there was that. But then, like I mentioned before, we had in the first commission, we had a communications subcommittee that really tried to use mostly through social media, Facebook, particularly mostly, to reach out to the different community groups and the different, neighborhood web pages that are in the town. We have a Town of Hampden website, so our Facebook group. So using those mechanisms as best we could to get it out. Did we miss people? I'm sure, there were folks who weren't plugged in and didn't know about it.
Invariably you will.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the answer to this about our website, the city's website. And Rick, I don't know if you know this or not, but I don't know how many hits our Norwalk website gets. I know there's some. excuse me, people that go there to look at different places they can sign up for hearings. But I'm concerned about how we even drive people to the city website. Because I've talked to some people who don't even know we have one.
Yeah.
You know, they ask for different things. So I'm just curious about,
You know, other thing, I mean, some of our local media was interested in it. So the New Haven Register and the New Haven Independent we had reporters who were very interested in following the process, and they would interview folks and do some articles on it. And so I think that was really helpful to have them, have articles in the local papers around what was happening and about the major changes. They talked about the 2-year versus 4-year term. They talked about it, so it was part of the media too. And so that they were helpful in getting folks to know about it.
New Haven has a very lively newspaper environment online, the Independent and the more traditional New Haven Register. My experience now in Stamford, the Advocate is doing a little coverage of the Stamford Commission. I don't think I've received, it's very unusual. I don't think I've received any calls whatsoever from the media regarding Norwalk. So I don't know what your local media is like in Norwalk.
Since we're live and in public, I will not give you my opinion.
One of the issues that we have to deal with is that our charter, we're going back to 1913. And so it is not, it's very confusing to anybody. And Steve has been culling through and bringing the issues together. The budget could be mentioned in 5, 6 different sections. So it's a mess and very difficult to understand and follow, and to try to, that's a real challenge to get something out that is clear. And as you said it, Sarah, it's going to get confused anyway, but ours is so darn confusing to begin with that, yeah.
But Commissioner Wazuna is making sure that I'm writing in plain English, so we'll have a much better charter.
Yeah. So Benita, you wanted to?
Well, one of the issues I see though is that people don't even seem to know that there is a charter revision commission.
I agree.
Yes.
I really don't think they just don't even know that there is one. It's beyond explaining what we're doing. The fact that we're doing it is not known. I think that's an issue, and I think that's a problem.
Okay.
I agree.
And the question that I was going to ask was asked by Angela. I just basically wanted to know how many public forums did people have, and what types of public forums to reach the public did you pursue? And so that was my question. And
Go ahead.
I'll just say too, like hybrid was our friend actually in this process. We did all of ours during COVID. We started, and so we never met in person through either commission. And because of that, I think we were able to actually reach more people because there were so many Zoom meetings going on. So I don't know if there's things that you can tap into that are virtual that you can just sort of, attend from your home or where you are, that you don't have to go, right? And so that was our friend during our process.
We're doing hybrid meetings.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other
Sarah, how do you think the participation levels were?
Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up on what Benita is also saying is that, how did you feel the participation level was by the citizens?
I think it was pretty good. I mean, like I said before, we had a core group of 15 to 20 that kind of participated almost every time. But then many others that came and went. I think the hybrid helped because folks were able to join. They could watch the videos afterward, so it allowed itself to broader participation. I don't know what it would have been like without it. I just know, like, now we're doing hybrid now with our legislative council meetings. And so we do we're Zoom and we're in person. And, unless it's a real hot topic issue, not a lot of folks show up in person anymore. It's really, I don't know if you have folks in the room with you now. It looks like you guys are in chambers. But so Zoom has really helped with that participation piece.
Tyler, did you have any ideas or? concerns?
No, I think, well, thank the three of you, very much for coming. This has been very helpful for me, to kind of hear how it's worked in action. I was going to ask Sarah in particular, the difference between why it was rejected initially versus accepted the second time around, but I think we've covered that. I was going to ask about outreach. I think we've covered, and I think there's some great ideas there. It's something I wanted to discuss among our group today anyway, and I think we've done a lot of that. The only other question I had was, in my kind of research on 2 versus 4 years, one thing that I've seen mentioned a number of times, and I've previously worked for the city of Bridgeport, which is all Democrats all the time. Norwalk, since I've lived here, has been primarily Democrats in the council and in the mayor's office. And one of the things I read was that by having the 4-year mayor term and 2-year council terms, you might have the opportunity to see greater minority party representation, just as almost like a midterm in Congress thing, right? It's a referendum on the president, it almost always rolls over. It's probably too early, Sarah, to know if that's been the case in Hampden, but I didn't know if any of you had any thoughts on that, and whether you also thought perhaps that could be the case in your situation.
Yeah, we don't know yet. It's a great question because it's 2025. It hasn't started yet, 2025. But that was something that came up. I think there is, and Steve mentioned this earlier, sort of folks who are more, we've got districts, so folks who are more involved in their districts are seen as district or community leaders, might be more able to get elected in positions in the council because they're in their groups. So it could, we don't know. I don't have here in Hampden, but I've, in our research, sort of that opening up government was something that we saw that seemed appealing.
Michael, do you have any questions or ideas you want to throw at us?
Yes, I want to know, will our Charter Revision Commission be given a budget so that maybe we could print pamphlets and place ads in the Norwalk Hour to inform the public about charter revision and the suggested changes we want to make?
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yes, please,
Michael, Commissioner, I pointed out a few moments ago, there is the explanatory text is permitted for public expenditure. Spending money in any other way from the public funds would probably violate campaign finance violation laws, but you're permitted to put out this explanatory text. Anything that is an advocacy piece would have to be funded with private money. And so very often, our commissions are bipartisan as a rule, is work very hard with both parties to try to get the leadership of both parties in the community to provide some seed money to allow for advocacy for the position of the charter, particularly if there's a unified position coming out of the commission that really doesn't get involved in any kind of partisan activity. But you need to raise the money privately. You can't use any other taxpayer dollars for advocacy. You can only use it for the legal statutory explanatory text.
Okay.
Can I just add something to what
sure.
Stephen said? Back when we did the last one, 2016, we did write an explanatory document, and there were 2 groups, one in favor and one not, that had formed and spent money on signs and getting things out. So and I believe that's going to happen again here too. I think it's the same makeup of the council and the mayor as we were in 2016.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, Carl.
So anybody have any last minute questions or comments?
I just have my hand up to ask Steve a question, because the thought ran through my mind as you were talking about how to fund this. Is this something that both parties could donate money to fund the public announcements, like the head of the DTC and the RTC, to inform the public that this is even going on? Because I think, that's a very good point. I mean, I talk to a lot of people all the time, as all of you do. They don't know this is going on.
I just said that, and that's why I work with my chair and the usually vice chair and other leadership of the commission to make sure we have a unified commission, that we try to avoid partisan divides, so that all the bipartisan members of this commission can go to their two political parties, or three or four, depending on the community, to get support from those parties to help with the signage and with advocacy. Advocacy. The explanatory text is explanatory. You need to spend some money and time on advocacy. And there's some things that don't cost money. Some of the things that Councilmember Gallagher talked about do not cost money, and they just require the time of the former commissioners to give. And so that's it. Yes, you can get the parties to support it.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, you have your hand up.
My question's been answered.
Okay.
I do have a question though, Patsy,
Oh, sure.
for
Benita?
Taisha maybe. When you were doing your charter revision, you said that you didn't even deal with the 2 or 4 year, or you did. I can't remember.
10 years ago.
When
they
you were
did.
first
Yeah.
doing it a while ago.
10
Was there-
years.
Yeah, was there a reason why when you were doing the charter revision, you didn't deal with the 2 and 4 year issue?
That was in the very beginning of my term, and that was under a different president. I'm not really totally sure why. I know previously, but I'm pretty sure Steve knows why, because he was our counsel. But I do know it was one time prior where it failed. I think at the alder level, because the mayor didn't want the board of alders to have 4-year terms, but the mayor wanted 4-year terms. So it fell there before. And I'm not sure how much it came up the last time, but this time it's coming up.
11 years ago, we were dealing with a 20-year mayor. We had a mayor in office for 20 years. It went back so long ago that I was his corporation counsel almost 25, 30 years ago. But he was in office for 20 years and went through one cycle where there was active debate on the 4-year term, and for the reasons Taisha indicated, it went down. 11 years ago, 10 or 11 years ago, when we were looking at this, we were doing, as she said, a lot of things. We were really trying to, and I'm very proud of the work they did as a former member of her body, that they really strengthened the legislative body in that process. And that was a very key and critical thing that they were trying to accomplish. And I think that the general feeling was, and I didn't talk to the president at the time was George Perez. George wasn't deeply involved in that, but I think if you talk to the chair of the commission, who's the chair of the new commission, actually, we just made a judgment call that we didn't want to tackle that issue. We had other bigger fish we wanted to fry, and we wanted to really clean up the charter and reorder it. It was a pretty substantial reorder. It's one of the most substantial ones I've done. Norwalk will be the most substantial one I've done. There's just not even a close second, because we really are, as Patsy pointed out, really trying to fix this document and reform the document even more so than the government. It's really, we want to have a document that's readable and understandable, and then you can come back 2 years or 4 years from now to reform. In New Haven, we were doing restructuring at the same time that we were trying to realign and clean up the document. So the issue was not a significant issue at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think nobody else has a hand up, so I think we're good, and we certainly appreciate all of your time that you're donating to us. It's been very, very helpful, Sarah, Benny, and Tisha. And who knows, we might be calling you back.
Thank
You
you.
might be speaking to their group. I can guarantee you somebody on this group will be speaking to their group. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
all.
Thank you
Thanks
so,
for having
so
us.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
So much. Have a great night.
Good night.
So
I hope that was helpful.
it was
Wow.
very
Yes.
helpful.
Wow.
I think, yeah.
And just think, there's 169 cities and towns in Connecticut, and they probably all do it differently too. You know, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there's only 100 towns that have charters. There's about 69 that do not. So
Right.
that's a different
True,
issue.
true.
Yeah.
So once you clean them all up, then you're gonna start writing new charters. for all the 69.
No, some of them.
God, I don't think I'm going to clean them all up. I'm happy with the big cities. I'll be happy with all my big
Okay.
cities.
So, do
I'll
we
leave it up to
want to
you.
talk anymore? Does anybody want to express their concerns, their interests on these issues? Or do you want to move on to something else?
Well, you know, one topic that we were talking about, getting the word out, Nita had talked about, and others. I have a very good rapport with Abigail from Hearst, which is Norwalk's coverage. I'm going to give her a call tomorrow and send her in the direction of, you know, we need to get some information out there because we have been together since September, and really there hasn't been anything said, or some of you said, they probably don't even know we've been doing this every other week for so long, and where we stand and how far we've come. So I will definitely give her a call tomorrow and go with that. I also thought the idea of a charter revision commission website is something that we probably should get up and going, and tie it to the city website. And tell people that's also available too, because, you know, if we're putting all this work in and we're doing some great things, you know, really should get out there, because we don't want to wait till the last minute when the public hearings come up and everybody comes to us and don't say, well, we didn't know this, we didn't know that. So I think it's important that we.
Both Hampden and Hartford had Facebook pages,
Yeah.
and they broadcast Facebook Live. So their meetings, I don't want to make Jordan's job any more difficult, but their meetings were both live on WebEx or Zoom and Facebook Live, and so that introduces you to a slightly different audience. That may be another way to reach out as well.
We're live on YouTube, right?
Yes, aren't we, Jordan?
Jordan?
We're live, aren't we?
Are we live on YouTube?
It's saying live up there.
WebEx or.
Yeah, it says it, and it says it's recording, and you're right,
Yeah.
Michael. I just didn't. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because a lot of these things, as we've all been on different things, has been on YouTube over the last 2 years. You get some feedback from somebody you know.
Mhm.
And I spoke just the other day with Nancy on something else. She called me about something. And I also talked to the Hour. They called about a similar situation. And neither one of them brought up anything about the Charter Commission. And I mentioned something just passing because I don't want to get into a long thing with them. But I just, you know, I said, you guys should investigate this and know this. And I'll even throw this at, you know, our own party here, Rick. I've mentioned this to the chair and to the districts about,
I have also.
I'm sure you have. I said, can you publicize this, you know, in your district meetings or just in the newsletter to the members that this is going on and this is important stuff, and don't get it through hearsay. And
Well, that's why I did that,
Crickets.
Carl, was because I didn't want it to become a political topic.
right, and it shouldn't be.
That's what happened the last time. It
Yeah.
became part of the election and the election.
Right.
I want us going into this where everybody's on the same page and it's smoothly, you know, put through. And, you know, a municipal election, you know, they'll pick anything off the tree to use. And that's why I want to make sure we get this out to everybody, because there's going to be people on both sides that like some and doesn't like the other part of it. But I really have told them, the party faithfuls, and the Republicans. But yeah, again, it seems like it's just falling on deaf ears and waiting. But I think if we go the Nancy and the Abigail route, that we'll be able to get some press on this. In the
Well,
next.
let me know if you need my help on any of those. two.
Absolutely. I'll be in touch. Probably most-
We also have Admittedly, I only poked around on it for the first time today because I was sending the link to someone in my district, but we have the Charter Commission page on the city website, right? I mean, it's got links to the minutes and the agendas, and it's got
Yeah, so under the boards and commissions page on the city website, there's the links to, there is a Charter Revision Commission page that has agendas, it'll have minutes, actions,
members,
and it has the form where any member of the public would be able to make a suggestion or a comment. And it's also updated before each meeting with whatever the topics are going to be for the upcoming meeting. But again, I don't know how much traction or how many hits those pages are getting. That's not data that I have. in front of me.
But who gets the feedback?
That would be coming to me, but there haven't been public comments.
Right,
received.
that's.
Yeah, I go
that
on there.
was
it exists already. Right?
Yeah,
So
right.
the page is there, and I don't, I'm able to do stuff with like my page in Greenwich, right? I can add widgets to the homepage or whatever it is. So if it's possible, and I can't imagine it'd be that hard, to maybe at least as we get a little closer, maybe like in March or something, have a link to it like right on the homepage, or have a button or something, and then we can drag people there. And I think we're going to do some kind of, I don't think it'd be terribly hard to do and I think the simpler the better, like a PDF 1 or 2 pages that has like, here are the things we're looking at and we're changing. You can have that. I mean, it's all there. The page is there. We'll just be adding links to it. So I think we can do that fairly easily.
Do we post the agenda on the city's website?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Because I know on some other things I've been on, it had to be on it. It had to be there by Tuesday prior to the meeting. So I didn't know if we were doing that or not. My bad that I haven't checked that.
Yeah.
But
And I would think
I
that,
think,
that basically the things that we've been changing and the things we've been doing have been pretty not, bipartisan. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Which is one reason why in my particular political grouping, I haven't mentioned it. I haven't brought it up when we talk because I thought that it needed to stay bipartisan in some respect, but I just don't know how to get out the word that we are functioning and that we're providing
that's what we're
service
saying. Right.
for everybody.
And
Right.
that's a concern that I have, is how we accomplish this, because I spent the last day or so rereading all of the sections with all of the changes and just trying to follow it. And it's overwhelming, to try to grasp it all. And how we can do it clearly, present it in a clear manner. Because right now it's muddled. The information for me is muddled. I have to go back and recheck something because the charter itself is so messed up. Trying to bring it into a cohesive document is, as you just said, Steve, is an enormous challenge. And so how can we make a clear presentation to everybody so they understand?
Well, what we can do is we start approving sections. I mean, my hope is that by our next meeting, I passed out the most recent. I don't want to jump to the next item because I also want to see whether you have any further thinking about giving me direction on the terms, on the succession and those types of issues. But just jumping briefly to Article 10, we're still waiting for the CFO's final comments on the budget, but we should be in pretty good shape. My hope would be, and I don't want to direct what you do, but it would be nice to adopt something. Even, so even though we may make changes again before May, if you get Article 10 adopted at the next meeting, one of the things I may do for you is to do a little summary. Now, we're not changing a lot. So the summary will be of what it is we have. And that's kind of the, I try to explain to people, we are restructuring the document, not restructuring the government in this charter revision.
Right.
And so I think that as I give you sections, as you get ready to vote, maybe I can do a summary sheet saying, here are the 10 things that are done in this chapter.
That would be good.
And I'm working very hard, and I kibitz with Commissioner Ozuna, really want to make this readable. And so the thing I hope that you hold me to is that I'm trying to get all the legalese as much as I can out of the document. in first drafts, you'll still see the legalese, because the first draft, I'm trying to make sure I've got everything in the document, and then we work toward where we are. And so the budget section is probably a good reflection of how that will evolve as we move toward approving it. And I would hope that we could do it at the next meeting. We will pressure. I've asked the mayor's office to get the CFO to give us his final comments so that we can do that. But I agree. And I think the real key, but the hardest thing is going to be for me, there's no way that we're going to be able to do a red line.
Yeah.
We're going to be,
I've heard
because
that.
Yeah.
there's just no way.
That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
This
And
is
that's
why
why
the summaries, the summaries are going to be critical, right? Just really
Exactly.
giving folks a good sense of what's in the document. We can't change it all.
Yeah. And because that's why I put the annotations on the pages, so that people can see. If somebody wants to go back and look at the current monstrosity and see how we moved and changed it, that they can do that. There's a puzzle, they can do that. But we're not going to be able to do a red line. There's just no way. So I think that we're really going to have good summaries of the documents to say, here's what's in them. We haven't changed the structure of government. We've tried to give you a document that you can read.
Yes.
That is more readable. And that's ultimately, I think, we're going to be what we're going to try to accomplish. So what I'll do is I'll experiment when we're ready to approve Article 10. I'll prepare a summary of Article 10 so that we can do that.
Will that be for our next meeting, Steve, or
If you'd
when?
like, I mean, it's up to you, Madam Chair, as long as I get the CFO.
Yeah,
yeah.
well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Well,
He
it's budget
is-
season,
No, seriously, he's in the middle of the budget process. He's they're overwhelmed. And so.
But we have a deadline too.
We have a deadline, so he's,
You
he's got to be impressed upon that. I've talked to the mayor's office. Hopefully we'll get that taken care of. So,
All right.
so my
Okay.
hope would be for the next meeting, that would be the principal item of business for the next meeting. But do you want to discuss any of the substance of what we discussed tonight to give me some direction, or how do we want to do
Sure,
this?
I'm happy to. Anybody want to jump in first?
I would just say that it seemed to
Okay,
me,
Carl?
maybe I wasn't doing counting, but it seems they all lean toward the 4-year term, and it all makes sense what they're talking about. And I don't mean this in a political manner or anything, but look at the 2-year terms of how Congress is run. Because as soon as you get elected, you're running for re-election. And that's always been a problem. And that was kind of brought up, I thought, by some of these folks tonight about in their consideration. And I do believe strongly that in order to attract your best people to run and put money into a campaign, if I'm running for something that's 4 years versus 2 years, I'm probably more apt to stick my toe in the water than I am if it's a 2-year thing, knowing that, and it's been said before, and we've all experienced this in other jobs or political jobs or whatever, you really don't know anything the first year you're in a new position, particularly government. So you're just getting your feet wet, you're just knowing it, and bam, I got to get out and run again. So anyway, my vote is I'm leaning very strongly toward going for the 4 years.
I kind of agree with you,
All right,
though.
let's go one by one. I guess it was Angela that.
But just clarity. Clarity, 4 years for both offices, Carl?
I actually tend to think that the 4 years for both offices, for council and for mayor. Now, I don't know what that does, Rick, in setting up election cycles, this, that, and the other thing. I mean, that's above my pay grade. I have no idea how you schedule stuff like that.
I just wanted to get clarity on that.
But I say, my vote would be for 4 and 4.
I concur with Carl, everything he said.
Okay, all right.
I agree with Carl too, and it makes little difference if they're voted in for 4 years or they just keep running every 2 years, and it's the same person anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, Michael, you want to jump in?
Well, I support 4 years for the mayor and 4 years for the council as well.
And let's see, Tyler, you.
So my question, I mean, when you have the 4-year terms be staggered, right? Because I feel like you lose some of the check
With the council.
lose some of the check on the mayor when you have concurrent four-year terms, because I think,
Yeah.
I think one of the things that happens now is you have both council and mayor running at the same time. The mayor's a big draw, he drags the council along with them, right? Whereas if you had a four-year mayor term, things aren't going so well, whatever, and you wanted to see a change, you would have the opportunity to do that in voting for the
The
council
council.
2 years into that term.
Right, the check and
So you're
balance.
talking about basically what you would need to do. I was talking about this in another community. To establish this, you to create a stagger. So you both would have four-year terms. But the first time one of the entities goes to the four-year term, the other entity would have a two-year term, and then 2 years later would go to a four-year term. So you both have four-year terms jumping over each other. So the council would have one in 2025. The mayor would get elected in 2027. So you keep them off cycle. So the mayor never runs with the council.
Right.
That's what you're aiming for, Tyler?
I mean, I personally am in favor of a four-year mayor term and a two-year council term, but if the majority wanted to see 4 and 4, I think you would have to do what you just described.
All right.
Okay, Rick?
Yeah, I'm coming from, again, I come from two directions
Right.
on this. If we were to do it with 4 and 4 with a stagger, I would go along with it, like Tyler said. And I would probably separate that with the at-large and the districts. Maybe staggered 1 year where we do at-large and the next 4-year election, we do it as the districts. Because I like the 4 for the mayor and 2 for the council, only because of this changeover of council people. And that one party thing where a lot of people are talking about, I think they'll mix it up. You'll get minority representation in the off year of the mayor. Right now, we are been consistent in the last 10 elections.
10 years, yeah.
At top of the ticket, if you really look at some of the elections, the first person on the ballot and the last person on the ballot are getting just about within 100, 200 votes of each other. If you had a staggered one, I don't think the top of that ticket would be the same number at the end. I'm just looking at it from an election point and from my own personal point as an elector.
So to understand it or try to explain it a little bit, when you stagger the two, you're going to create 2 classes of council. The group that runs with the mayor, remember, if you're going to stagger, you're both going to have the 4-year terms. If you put one group with the mayor, that will be in effect a mayor's ticket of council members that will come in every 4 years. And then you'll have the non-mayoral ticket of council members that come in the other cycle. So you have to recognize that you will have mayoral influence in the cycle the council members run with the mayor. So if we
put those, if we put the at-large with those, you'll have 5. And if you do the council in the off election, you would have the other 10.
Yeah. So you'll be electing, if you put the at-large with the mayor, you basically have a citywide class of elected officials. And then in the other cycle, you'd have your district cycle if you split it. All right.
Correct.
I just want to
It's
explain
just a
because
thought.
it will be an interesting balance within the body of the council.
But I think you will get that minority representation.
Opportunity.
Not representation.
No, but.
I can't guarantee that.
I've argued this for 40 years. So I agree that if I argued with my Republican friends in New Haven that if the alders kept a 2-year term, you'd have an opportunity to elect more Republicans when the mayor's not at the top of the ticket, because the mayor's a big pull. And that's why I've always argued, I don't have a position that I don't have a vote here, but I've always argued for the council that they're better off in having their own cycle when it comes right down to it.
I believe 4-year terms, being somebody that has to run every 2 years, it really does become a pain. You get going and you have a project going, you have to stop, run again, start your project up again. So it does get kind of crazy that way.
Yeah, I personally, I'm strongly in favor of 4-year term for mayor. And I'm looking at it less than from the ability to attract people to run, rather than looking at from the point of view of running the city. And my life has been heavily involved in construction projects, roads and schools and all the rest of it. And I know how long it takes to get a project going. So I think in this day and age, and in the way construction goes and developments within our city, and Norwalk is experiencing an unusual growth within the state, that I'm very comfortable with a 4-year for mayor. I have not made a decision on the council. My gut is to stay with the 2, but I'm open for further thought on it. If that's
I
helpful.
think that's very helpful for me. I appreciate it. How about the issue of succession? Do you have any thoughts right now? As I told you, even though everybody kind of thinks the president succeeds.
Yeah, I read that section again before I came tonight, and I find it messy. It just does, it is it's not
Good word for it.
it's not clear. And you know, I had been president of the council many years ago, and it wasn't just a 1-year thing. Now it seems to be, you know, they rotate. They came to an agreement somewhere along the way, and they're up for 1 year. And, you know, in running this city, we need, I think, more stability if for any reason we lost our mayor. So I think we got to really talk about that. And then I also found how somebody's going to be replaced, and it comes from the parties. If the person, whoever vacates a position, comes from the same party, there's nothing in the charter that says how that process is done, other than the council the council votes. Well, where does this name come from? I mean, what? So in some sections it says it comes from the party, and then in other sections it doesn't. So I think we need to really look at that.
Yes.
I've been told, because I raised questions about having your political parties in your charter. And somebody said, well, which I have a problem with. On the other hand, the statutes for registrar of voters says the same thing. You have the political parties make the choice of the replacement. And I was blown away when I looked at that section of the statutes. Kind of undermined my argument of taking the political parties out of it.
I mean, we have it both ways.
And we've had to do that. That's why.
We should have a consistent standard.
Right.
It's one thing to say that the replacement should be a member of the same party that is leaving. The real question is, do you want the political parties making that specific choice to be ratified by the council, or do you want the council to make that choice? And they can, if it's a Republican seat, they can go to the Republican Town Committee and ask for their thoughts on it. But ultimately, it's a council decision. So you guys need to think about that.
That one we need to have a little more discussion.
Can we work on that whole section next time to sort of
Absolutely.
clean it?
Yeah. So if we we'll jump around between section 6 and 7, because section 7 will address that.
Okay.
That I am doing an update of articles 1 through 3, 9, 11, and 12. It sounds like a lot, and it kind of is. At the early part, 1 through 3 are all the definitions, elections, all that stuff. I have now vetted the issues with the mayor's office, with council leadership, and I just got comments back from the deputy corporation counsel. So my hope would be for your next meeting to have a second round of that document with all the updates from those people, and I will try to do my first refinement of the document. So right now, there's a lot of things that you will see that I've asked to have come out of the charter. You will also see I think it's chapter 12. Chapter 12 is the receiver for everything that has to go into the taxing districts. Remember, I told you we're not changing anything with the taxing districts, but I am taking every reference to the taxing district that exists in the earlier portions of the charter and just putting it in the taxing district section so that you don't have to look to the charter to find out what the taxing districts do. You look at the taxing district, well, it's in the charter, but in their own chapter, you will see everything that they do. So I'm going through that process as well. So I wanted to explain that is moving along really nicely. And, so my hope would be at the next meeting, you'll see a cleaned up version of Articles 1 through 3, 9, 11, and 12, and you'll have the budget ready for action. I will also try to get to you if you don't, if it's okay. Are there any questions on that before I jump to the next one? Any thoughts?
That's good.
Good. Article 4, I actually have run that through council leadership, through city halls, looking at it as well. And I think, whoop, I have it right here. I think, yes, Brian Candela has actually looked at that as well. Article 4 is the Common Council. Now that's an interesting section. One of the things I handed out to you today, Patsy asked me to do this, and I always follow the lead of our chair, for the record. I got out to you the Municipal Powers Act. Everybody got it? Everybody see it?
Yeah, I have it. I
Yeah.
put it somewhere.
When you
Yes.
look at, and you don't have to read it, you don't have to memorize it, but what I want you to do is to understand that so much of what is in your charter is in your charter because the Municipal Powers Act didn't exist.
Mhm.
All right. And so the fact that the Municipal Powers Act exists means that your municipality can do anything that's in the Municipal Powers Act. It doesn't even have to be in your charter. You can adopt an ordinance because an ordinance, as long as the ordinance doesn't violate anything in your charter, if the Municipal Powers Act says you can do something, set up an ethics board, you don't need to have the ethics board in a charter. I always believe ethics boards should be in charters because I think they should be mandated in the local constitution. But you don't need to put it in your charter because the Municipal Powers Act gives you the power to do it. So when we get to the council section, that's going to be a section you're going to see massive change because you have tens of pages, 20, 25 pages of the things that says you can do this, you can do that, you can do the other thing, you have authority over wood buildings, you have authority over pig pens, you have authority over brothels, you have authority over this, over that, over the other thing. It's unbelievable. And what you're going to see is, I'm going to make a slight modification of it, is I went through and I will show you, I'm going to do a box in the early section of the document that's going to show you everything that is coming out. And I'm going to show you the parallel provision in the Municipal Powers Act that says you can do this, you don't need this provision.
Mhm.
So it's going to be the most radical portion of the charter that we're going to change, because we're going to be taking an awful lot out. But I want to assure you, and I will assure the council, we're not taking powers away from anybody. In fact, I'm going to have a provision that gives the council the ability to adopt ordinances on any area where they are authorized by law. So the Municipal Powers Act, they have to become convinced that everything that they have now is in the Municipal Powers Act. I can assure you
That's
that it is.
key. What you just said for our saleability is key.
Yep.
And so how do we get this, it's 20 pages, easily referenced, or having people read the charter, know what they can do from this act.
Well, I'm going to try to create what I did in my first draft, and Tom Livingston thought it was just too cumbersome, and I agreed, is I took all the captions from the Municipal Powers Act, not every word of the Municipal Powers Act,
Right.
every caption in it, every subject matter in it, and I put it into the body of the document. That itself becomes like almost a page of subject matters. It's certainly shorter than 25 pages, but it's still a pretty dense piece of prose. And what I did is I put the reference to the Municipal Powers Act in. Then I had a footnote to that section to show these are the sections that are coming out that are connected to that.
Mhm.
That's not going to be in your final charter. I'm going to create a chart that lays out those sections and shows you what's coming out and says, This is why it can come out, because state law says you can do it. And the other thing I will point out for the record is I'm not aware, I will double check this before I make an affirmative statement. I'm not aware of any municipal power that's been taken away. The municipal powers have been added to over the years, and nothing has been taken away to my knowledge under the Municipal Powers Act. And so I don't think you have to worry about losing something. The other thing I want to point out for the record is there are things that are going to stay in from your current charter. And I'll give you a good example. You currently have an ability that most municipalities in Connecticut do not have, the ability to control firearms. Most municipalities would give their right arms to have the ability to control firearms locally. That's in your charter. You got it. It's a special act of the legislature. Now, whether you're going to be able to do anything about it, whether Second Amendment warriors were to come in and stop you, is another issue, but it's a power you shouldn't give away. It's also powers over other dangerous instrumentalities, and we're leaving those kinds of things are being left in there. And I've asked the I've asked the Corp Council to look at it because I don't know day to day what provisions of the charter the Corp Council's office has worked with, and if any. And so there may be something that I think is obscure or unnecessary, but the Corp Council will say to me, we just had a case last year and we have a tradition of dealing with it this way, then it's going to stay in. And that's the exercise I'm going through right now. So my hope would be by the next meeting to not have this for full discussion, but to have it in your hands so you can begin to see where the legislative and the mayor, I'm also going to have the mayor section done as well, which is chapter 5. And so that's a lot of the charter, guys. And just to give you a preview of coming attractions, I had a long meeting with the mayor's office yesterday to go through all the boards and commissions that are in the current charter and all the departments that are in the current charter. I have the organizational list of all the boards and commissions and departments. So next week, once I finish the mayor's section, I'm going to start grappling with boards and commissions and departments. Those are the last 2 areas that I haven't touched yet. Everything else in the charter, believe it or not, I know you're worried, and I'm worried. We're all worried.
Yeah, I'm worried.
Everything else has been touched. I want to just give you an assurance because it's a huge enterprise. I've never done this. Bridgeport 11 years ago was pretty close, but I've never done this before, and we're going to get it done. I assure you, we're going to get it done. But I now have the backup information from the administration just on structure, not their position on anything, but on the structure, what's in the government. Like, for example, welfare doesn't exist anymore. Well, that's coming out, so we're not, but you'll see that hopefully in about 3 weeks, hopefully by mid-March, you'll have at least one, if not both of those big sections. And my hope would be to have all of the initial drafting done by mid-March. Again, to live up to the WASUNA standard, we're going to have to do a lot more work. Sorry, Commissioner. We're going to have to do a lot more work during the month of March and April and early May to clean it up finally. And that may even continue as it goes to the council. Because one of the things I want to tell you is I'm sure that it'll come back to you one more time. I continue to clean up and draft all throughout the process to make sure that by the time this thing gets out in July or August, we've got the best charter we can possibly have. So that's where we are on all the stuff we're working on.
Question for you, Steve, real quick on the list of charters and commissions that you have. Are they all appointed?
The list of
the members, because I don't know what the entire list is, and in fact, if you could share that, that would be great.
boards and commissions.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll get that over to you. I'll be happy to. It's on the website.
On the website though, Carl.
Yeah, but
A lot of vacancies.
yes.
Oh,
And are they all appointed members of those commissions? There's nobody.
Most of them
elected,
are
right?
appointed and approved by the council. if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken.
all,
Yeah.
all
Is that right, Rick? All of them
yeah,
are?
all appointed. Yeah, we don't have any other boards or commissions elected.
The Board of Ed's the only other.
So the full
Right.
list is on the website?
What?
Yes.
Okay. Then
Yes,
Steve, you
I'm
don't have
working
to
from
send
that,
me-
and I'm working from the organizational chart to
And I was
see
just going
what-
to say, sorry to cut you off, Steve. Carl, if you, on the city website, you would go to city government on the right-hand side on the homepage, and boards and commissions will be one of the things that pops down. And that'll list all of them, and it has, specific, what specifically needs to be done to be filled on that board or commission. So, and I can send you that link as well.
That'd be great. I appreciate that.
Okay, do we want to talk about anything else tonight?
I would only say that when you were talking, maybe I'm wrong on this, Steve, but you mentioned summaries.
Yes.
I think that would also be helpful. I know it would be for me, I think, would be helpful for all of us.
Well, that was my intention.
Yeah,
So,
because then,
That was my intention. My intent for the budget. We'll experiment with the budget, and you'll tell me whether I've hit the nail on the head or hit my finger with the hammer. But we'll figure that out. Next, we'll figure that out in 2 weeks. My plan would be to experiment with when I send the budget over to you, I will give you a summary of what is in that document.
okay, because that would also help us when we engage, those we engage and talk about this, to talk about stuff. And if you want a summary, I'll share it with you. Can we do
Yeah.
that or not?
Oh, no, absolutely. Look, it'll help me because in May, I've got to draft a transmittal letter for Patsy to sign.
Okay.
And so the more I get done in terms of summaries now, the easier the draft will be when we get to May and have to send this over to the
And
council.
I think what, Carl, you're really going to is we need talking points
Yes.
and to have them articulated for us, perhaps.
Yep.
And so that as we start to get any response from the media or any other organization, that we can be clearer, because it is it was articulated tonight, well, that we're restructuring the document, not the government. I mean, that's very clear, and it's powerful and important to convey that kind of concept. So we need some tags that we can use and think clearly when we're out with friends and being challenged.
And
so
to clearly keep talking about that this is a non-partisan, we all may be members of parties, but it's a non-partisan endeavor. Because
Right.
I still get hit between the eyes all the time. This is Harry's commission.
Who's Harry?
I have no idea. Potter, Harry Potter?
We thought it was Jordan.
My father-in-law was named Harry. He was a wonderful man. So
I'm sure
yeah,
you are.
so my challenge is I will draft. I'm going to try to make it as smart and pithy as I can. But here's what I want to remind every one of you. I'm going to give you a draft. You're going to have the document. I ask all of you to look at it to make sure that it's explainable. You know your community better than I do. And so ultimately, you're going to have to convert this into your language, the 7 of you, and into your language so that you can explain it. And, I want to be very careful about not being too deeply into legalese. It's one of the reasons I write music and lyrics, so I can humanize myself once in a while and get away from the legalese. And but it's ultimately yours. And so when I send it over, hopefully it'll be useful to you. But what I also want is let's not let it become a dead issue 2 weeks from now. You guys should look at it and say, we could explain it a little better than that, Steve. And here's what we recommend. So I want you to, there's no pride in authorship. I'm going to work my tail off to make sure this is the best document for you, but I need the 7 of you to read them and tell me where we need to make it clearer. And it's not just Angela's, it's all of you. I need every one of you to do that.
And we have really almost 3 weeks now before our next meeting. So I really urge all of us to take that instruction from Steve and give him some written responses.
And I will send you, as soon as I go through Brian Candela's comments, I will send you the updated document. I'm not going to sit here and wait 3 weeks to send it to you. If I have it in a week, I'm sending it to you. And I urge you to start looking at it. It won't be for formal action, but then if you have comments, give them to me. just give them to me. Just send me an email. Do whatever you think is effective. If you want to mark it up, if you want to make your changes, and you don't even have to redline it. If you make the changes in Word, I'll do a red line to your document to see what you've done. Please feel free. This is your package, and it's ultimately a package that needs to be readable for the council and the people, ultimately.
Right.
It's also our responsibility, which we volunteered for, I guess. But sincerely, we need to get some of these things fine tuned so we can move it along.
Yep.
Any other
That's all I have.
comments? Okay, anybody else? All right,
Good meeting.
Okay.
Steve,
Good-
thanks for
very
getting
good
it
meeting.
put together.
That, Steve, it was
Right.
incredibly
Yeah.
helpful having those people there.
Absolutely.
Helped,
Good, I'm glad.
how you
If
think
we need
about
to
it.
do it in any other area, just let me know, and I'm happy to do it.
I do have a question.
oh, okay, great.
Michael, I didn't hear from you. I don't think we heard from you what you thought about in terms of 4 or 2 years.
Oh, I said I was in favor of 4 years for
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
for the council.
Okay.
I had Michael's vote.
I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Okay, well, that's important that you ask. I appreciate
Yes.
that. So a motion to adjourn is in order.
I'll move.
Okay, second.
Second.
All those in
Second.
favor? Aye. You can go
Aye.
home and watch the girls' basketball game, the last 6
All right,
minutes.
Rick, I'll let you know about my lecture tomorrow night.
Patsy,
Take care.
You're making
Patsy,
me
did you
jealous,
get my-
Steve.
did you get
Got
my
me
email I sent
jealous,
you?
Steve.
See you later.
I'm listening to your song tomorrow morning.
Okay, please. Yeah, the man with 3 names. Yeah.
That's right.